What if some of the foods, spices, and other products that you trust most are quietly exposing you to substances that can affect your brain, your energy, your hormones, and your, of course, longevity, your long-term health? Today on Truth or Trend, Dr. Vrzal and I, slow it down. We're taking a fair and honest look at heavy metals, what the research actually says, and where the exposure may be coming from. Most importantly, what you can do about it today. And Dr. V has thrown together some beautiful slides that he wants to share about this. So, Dr. V, take it away, my friend. Where are we going with this?
All right. And the metals that they found in the McCormick, unfortunately, in the McCormick spices are these that we were planning to talk about today, huh?
That's
Look
right.
at that. So you can see my screen, right?
Yes, sir.
And just to confirm that we are not AI, we are
We're going
real
to make
humans.
mistakes. We're going to say goofy things. Just so you know, we're real people.
We are very prone to make mistakes and say goofy things, for sure. So yes, toxic metals is quite the subject, and
Yeah.
we have a lot to share on this, and we're going to kind of scratch the surface today, with the conclusion that you've heard several times on this podcast previously. But let's go into some of the heavy hitters. And ultimately, cancer is the big risk with these, because they compromise the way enzymes function. They compete for where minerals should be that activate enzymes and activate, cellular health overall. So when these metals bind up where minerals should be, then we end up with challenges and long-term, really dire challenges. And so we are here to inspire you to make better changes ultimately, have a better quality and quantity of life, and be all that you can be. Yeah,
Nice.
be all that God has intended for you, right? So the most common toxic metals and their sources. Here's a overview of a few of them. Arsenic is in a lot of pesticides. It's in rice, unfortunately. This doesn't include
That's
rice,
a
but
big one that blows people away. Commonly, I have to ask people, hey, how much rice are you eating? Because rice is, of course, hugely consumed here in Texas, big part of it. And I'm always encouraging people, please look for whole grain or organic rice, instead of just hitting it, especially looking at those things that people eat every day, right? It may be creeping up on them and they don't even realize it. But I'm surprised that rice isn't one of your top common sources of exposure. But that's the other question I'm always getting. Well, where else am I getting exposed to arsenic? So I love this graphic. It's really helpful.
yeah. And so remember that rice is super water intensive, and arsenic's in from pesticides in most of the water tables. And so that's where these things end up compromised. I've had patients try to search for literally where in the world is rice produced that doesn't have arsenic, and there's some, tiny little place in in Israel or something that did not have arsenic in it. And
Wow.
other than that, pretty much all the rice showed arsenic, unfortunately. So it's a biggie, and it's a major cause of kidney cancer is one. I've got a testimony about that and coming up. But skin, lung, and a bunch of different cancers. Then we've got cadmium is another one we've talked about, as I've discovered, and it shows in the literature that it blocks vitamin D production, which opens up all kinds of big problems, right? And cancers and all the health and bone compromises that would go along with vitamin D deficiency. So most people aren't sucking on nickel cadmium batteries, but it gets into our landfills, or we touch them or get exposed to it that way. Uh, so cadmium is definitely there. Again, it's typically going to, well, tobacco smoke. If you're still a smoker, then arsenic and cadmium are pretty big in tobacco smoke. But again, it's pesticides is the big trigger, and then red paints. Typically, it's usually the red pigments. So tattoos, some of the older red colored tattoos also can have cadmium in them.
Mm.
So these
Do
are
we
some of the
know,
sources.
not to cut you off here, but do we know with the tobacco smoke, is that something that is naturally chelated into tobacco, or is it because of pesticides? Because I know it's almost impossible to find organic tobacco as well, right, in the United States. That's something that I've had some patients ask me about. But
Yeah.
also, is it from the other chemicals and all the other nonsense that they put into cigarettes, or is it just straight tobacco? Just to kind of be clear, I don't know if you know the answer, but
Unfortunately, I do not. That's a great question. I wish I had a specific answer. I mean, most, even nicotine I've tested shows toxic metals, so I have to assume it's kind of grown into it. Even the so-called organic. Speaking of, I guess I have tested the nicotine patches and so-called organic, and they still seem to show nickel and toxic metals.
Okay.
So unfortunately, it's probably grown into it. So you were about to endorse growing your own tobacco,
Well, I
huh?
mean, I'm always just, trying to give people good, better, best, and just to kind of give the full
Yeah.
picture that it's not always just tobacco, right? That is the issue. There's so many other things that are around the conversation of tobacco that is an issue. But so
Yeah.
just to
Yeah.
kind of give you some, I have looked into this a little bit, and I do believe that it is accurate to say that tobacco is highly efficient, what they call it a hyper accumulator that
Mm.
actively extracts heavy metals, especially cadmium, from the soil and
Okay.
locates them into the leaves. Now that's from the National Institutes of Health, and I can share that article a little bit later. But I actually had thought about growing tobacco on the fields of our farm in Wisconsin to become organic to help pull out the heavy metals to remove them for us to
Mm,
grow another crop on. That's something that we're working on right now, thinking about how do we transition this farm to something that's going to be healthy for my dad's grandchildren, right? To
right.
grow up on and reduce the limitations that being out there will have on their long-term health. So
Right.
one of the things we looked at was growing tobacco just to pull the garbage out and throw it away.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That answered that. So it's a rhetorical question you asked, huh?
Well, I just thought maybe you'd have a different perspective, right? Everybody has their different ways of looking at it.
And I did. I have my muscle testing perspective, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So chromium, interestingly, I mean, chromium's a mineral.
That
It
we
should be a
need,
good mineral that we
right?
need, right, to stabilize blood sugar, resensitize insulin receptors, and so on. But in the wrong form, it is toxic, right? Chromium plating, chrome, right? The chrome bumpers that our cars used to have. Now it's all plastic.
Right.
But then leather tanning, steel. So we got the group one carcinogen that chromium can be. Nickel is big. So nickel in jewelry is a very common cause of UTIs. So about 33% of the population is, well, 33% of the population is going to be very sensitive neurologically, going to be very sensitive to nickel. The other third will be um, well, you lost my train of thought. Mercury, nickel, mercury, or aluminum are one of those three that they're going to neurologically be sensitive to. So those are the gals that are going to get UTIs when they wear, the big cross that's touching their skin, or charm bracelets, or the watch back of, the back of their watch that's touching their skin 24/7.
Right.
They're going to be absorbing nickel and cause UTI, urinary tract problems, whereas the other 60-ish, percent of the population would not have that. So, but it is, nickel in quantities, again, through jewelry, through stainless steel, through batteries, industrial emissions. These are carcinogenic. And then we've got lead. Lead very much disrupts bone health. So we're talking bone cancers and lung cancers and
Well,
kidney.
because it specifically does displace calcium, right? There's a big
Right.
competition there between those two. Yeah.
Yes, yes, I think that's 4 slides from now. Exactly. So exactly. So lead and then you combine that with cadmium that displaces or compromises vitamin D production, and you're looking at osteoporosis, you're looking at bone cancers because it's the body's regenerating unhealthy bones instead.
Right.
So we have some cancer, we have some sources. The other one
Hey, can we go
is
back real quick? I just want to make a point on this. You mentioned chromium being in the wrong form, and I think this
yep.
bears repeating. So
Okay.
many times people think that chromium is chromium is chromium, or copper is copper is copper, right? So there's
Right.
the second name on a mineral is the world of difference, right? Whether I was trying to think of somebody, a famous other Scott, instead of Dr. Scott Vrzal, if it was Scott Bakula, right? I wouldn't want him to be my doctor, right? Or Scott, some other person. The second
Right. Okay.
name changes who that person is dramatically, right? So because I've talked about this with copper. So people, copper sulfate is what's put
Mm.
into most of these garbage vitamins sent from that somebody donated to me just to use as a demonstration. And most of those minerals in there, just because they have the first name copper or chromium, doesn't mean that they're giving you the second name, which is actually going to get you healthy. And that's why
Yeah.
the name Vrzal is so important. It's this that's the important second name. All right, so
Yes.
I
Well, I mean,
digress.
yes, no, we've talked about that with lithium, right?
Yes, right,
You know what,
exactly.
if it's lithium carbonate, it's a pharmaceutical, right?
Right, exactly.
So, yeah,
Or lithium glutamate. There's a few different countries use different versions for their lithium, but yeah, that's why lithium orotate is a vastly different situation than those. Exactly.
for sure. And so chromium, and, you know, some of the supplements are chromium picolinate.
Mhm.
Favorite sources, what should people be looking at on chromium and their labels?
Right.
So what is
Oh, what should they be
SP's?
looking for?
Yeah.
Well, they should be looking for whole food forms, right? They should be, and
Right.
so when it comes to chromium, I always say trivalent chromium is something that I'd be looking at. I'd be looking at something that
Yeah.
comes in a whole food. That's why I found that SP Red Food is one of my favorite chromium supplements for
Mm,
people
okay.
because it's very high in naturally occurring chromium from the mountain spinach, and then there's also standard process as a whole food base of chromium complex, right? Because it's
Right.
multiple things that are coming with it instead of just straight chromium picolinate, which you're right, you said has been marketed and it's in all kinds of products out there online. But
Yeah.
I would say that that is an inferior form at best.
Right. As we see here.
Yes. I'm seeing if
So
this
come on.
Centrum has chromium in it. Well, and here's the thing when you're looking at this, it doesn't even tell you the second name of these. It just says calcium, phosphorus, magnesium. It doesn't even tell you what the form is until you go down below. And then,
Mm.
oh, here we go. Yeah, we've got chromium in here. Sorry, I've got to get past all the Red Lake number 40 and all the others to find out that yes, let's see. It's going to
Mm.
be, I'll find it. You go ahead and I'll catch up to you
So
after
the
the next
next
slide.
toxic metal I was going to call out was thallium, and that's relevant to me because it is highly found. It is in car exhaust. So when they replaced the they got the lead out of the car exhaust, out of auto fuel, they put thallium is in there. And so I being a cyclist, I'm around car exhaust a lot, and I get a cough when I ride my bike around traffic and so on, that I'm needing to take lung supplements or binders to clean up my lungs. And I am dealing with a close friend, patient right now that is one of rides with me, and it gets exposed to this thallium, and in his case lead, and he's now has cancer in his brain, lungs, and bones and lymphatic system, where this has really run amok. So this is a heavy hitter for, near and dear to my heart in the way that this affects. So thallium is in our environment, especially from car exhaust, again, from cigarette smoke. It compromises the way, potassium activates cells. Thallium gets in there and binds up where potassium should be, which is, massively relevant for so many pathways.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And so many people are
Process.
already low in potassium to begin with, right?
Right.
So
This
they're
makes it worse, right?
susceptible to a thallium toxicity because they just don't have anything to even compete with it.
Right. There, yeah, perfect. Yeah, exactly. And leading up to what kind of our premise today. And so thallium crosses cell membranes easily. It accumulates in the nerves, we think brain, right? Disrupts enzyme systems, damages mitochondria. So then we have low energy, increases free radical damage. All that leads to cell death ultimately, right? In virtually every organ, as you see in this chart, and on the right side of the diagram here, we've got all the hair, skin, reproductive organs, cardiovascular, nervous system, bones should be in here as well. So, I mean, yuck. It's a big yuck. And so we've got DNA damage, means AKA cancer, right? Oxidative damage leads to malignant type cancers where multiple tissues are involved. Mitochondria is our energy production and kind of the cell health, if you will, and then chronic inflammation all over the place. So big bummer when we get exposed to this. So don't suck on tailpipes. It's kind of the moral of this story.
All right.
But I mean, I kind of joke like that. But I mean, the reality is, when I'm at a light, I'm on my bicycle behind a car.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well,
if you're a
yeah.
driver, I go
And you
beside, try to
smell
go
it.
beside them. Yeah,
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 you
yeah,
smell it when
yeah.
you're even if somebody's like a gross polluter on the road, or it hits you, and you're like immediately my instinct is get out of here, open the windows, and just drive out in the country, get this out of me. So I feel you, man. I feel you.
Right. So neurologic toxicity, mitochondrial damage. So thallium's another one that we want to be careful of and be aware of. Mercury, mercury is in old dental fillings. We
Yeah.
those of us that are old enough to, hope, praise God, the dental industry has reduced a lot of those when the mercury's in these old silver amalgams. There's videos of that literally like vaporizes as we chew. There's mercury vapor that goes out and goes directly to the brain. And so it's very neurotoxic when it's dental amalgams. When it's fish and seafood, that type of mercury tends to hang out in the intestine. I say that's good news because it's a lot easier to bind up and get rid of when it's from fish.
Hmm.
Uh, Incidentally, cilantro is a good binder of mercury. So there's a tidbit that
Good to
I should
know.
have included in this chart. So Mexican food, right? Eat the cilantro.
Well, I can't say
Um,
enough about parotid PMG though when it comes to mercury for sure. I mean,
mhm.
well-intentioned as a child. I had not the best diet. I had mercury put in multiple of my teeth. Now I did find a dentist who was able to pull that out and replace it, except in my wisdom teeth. They just want to take my wisdom teeth out. So I haven't found. I know that they're out there, and I need to take the time to do it. But I take parotid regularly, as you're showing right now, because
Mm.
I know that I'm still getting exposed to it like on a regular
Yeah.
basis because of that. It's the only
Wow.
advantage you have over me. See that? Wait till I get that mercury out. And you're not gonna be able to keep up.
Let's go.
I
I can't believe you still have that in there.
know, I
Yeah.
know. It's well, it's one
Yeah.
of the things you kind of forget about, and then you're like, you
Right.
got to make it a priority, and I need to because I know that it's definitely something that's been slowing me down a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, so my story was years ago. I kind of went on a hardcore, really kind of a pescatarian diet, and so I was eating a couple pieces of fish at lunch every day and practically every meal, and started getting gnarly mercury toxicity, and I could
Wow,
not generate the power on my bike, and
wow,
what's going on? What's going on? I finally realized that I was just ODing on swordfish was a big part of what I was consuming at that point. And
wow.
so I had to go
And
through and clean that all out and take the parotid, take the chelaco, get my system back in order.
yeah,
And slowly my stamina, my performance came back. Another gentleman that had full sleeve of tattoos decided he was over it. He'd outgrown it, so he was getting the older tattoos, the older dark type black ink used to have mercury in it. And
mhm.
so then somebody decides they want this gentleman, about the same time I was dealing with it, decided he wanted to get it removed. So removal is a laser, basically obliterating, sending all that toxin into the bloodstream to get it out. So his levels just became accelerated, and he lost 30 pounds of muscle and could hardly get out of bed and hardly work while he
Wow,
was going through all that. And it was a quite a journey to get that ink, that mercury out of his system.
wow,
So that's when, so my old fillings, and then combine that with the fluoride that I was lovingly given as a kid, is
right.
why I have less than adequate hair on my head. Compromise my cuticle. What is it? My hair. Anyway, so immunizations, unfortunately, is another very common source of mercury
Mm,
in the thimerosal. Back in the day when our peers, the you know holistic health arena got all up in arms and saying that mercury was the main cause of problems from vaccines, they reduced the mercury and added aluminum. So now they got two toxic metals in there, which exaggerates, heaps up, if you will, the consequences of the toxic metals because now there's two instead of just mercury in there. So we'll talk about some strategies if you're in one of those predicaments, forced to be able to exist, you'll need to get a vaccine. And there's some strategies we can talk about. So thermometers, don't play with thermometers. um, so lots of neurologic damage and challenges, mental, emotional. Mercury causes low serotonin. Mercury competes for because of trying to get the mercury out through the kidney. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter, brain's control of the kidney, and so we end up low serotonin. Low serotonin is mental, emotional malaise, if you will,
sure.
apathy, where they just don't want to get going. And so B6, folate, magnesium, and zinc are good nutrients to help produce it, but we want to get the mercury out so that it's not compromising the brain's production of serotonin.
Such a great reminder. So many times I'm testing people and low serotonin is the top number one, their kidney, right? And so
Yeah.
sometimes Arginex will help it. Sometimes, different kidney support products will help it. But often, I do have to look for heavy metals, right? For sure. Taking the
Yeah.
pressure
So
off of the kidneys.
So good point. So in that case, if you're a muscle tester, using the Vrzal technique, we would prioritize, if I rub over the kidney, does the serotonin point or does the brain become strong? Then I'm going to look at Arginex. I'm going to look at cleansing the kidneys, for example, to get it out. If healing the brain or the serotonin corrects the kidney, then I'm going to go after things like B6, folate, magnesium to facilitate serotonin production, to facilitate that way. So that way in muscle testing, that's the beauty of it, of that Vrzal technique really, is to put all that together. We can say, hey, if I clear toxic metals is right over the carotid artery, if you will, on the right side of the neck, if I rub over that and serotonin gets better, then I know mercury is the trigger there. So I'm going to want to chelate that person or clean that person up. Incidentally, a lot of the medical chelating protocols with DMPS and EDTA will show lower mercury in the blood, but unfortunately, there's been studies demonstrating that deposits that mercury goes out of the blood, but deposits in the brain and the fatty tissues of the brain.
Right.
So I get a little nervous when patients want to try to chelate, so-called chelate out with those chemicals to get it out because of the potential effect on the brain, and I've seen many patients with that consequence after trying to do chelation to get the mercury out of their system. So we've got nutrients that can help us make serotonin if it's a deficiency that's causing the problem, but in this case, a lot of what we're talking about here is mercury, especially from old fillings, that causes low serotonin. Low serotonin is depression, anxiety. Really, anxiety is more high serotonin. That's really kind of the defining factor difference between low and high serotonin. Is low serotonin is depression and malaise, and irritability, poor sleep, these things. Whereas high serotonin is going to be depression with anxiety and OCD obsessiveness. There'll be cravings because sugar pushes serotonin into the brain, gives a temporary lift. So there'll be carb sugar cravings, certainly brain fog, fatigue. Poor sleep, again, serotonin is the precursor to melatonin. So in serotonin, in the presence of magnesium and B12, incidentally, converts to melatonin so we can have a good night's sleep. So if we're deficient in serotonin, then sleep's going to be potentially compromised as well. So getting a little detailed there, but just to help people, identify, some of these are going to make sense to people that are suffering with this, so we can have tools to clean up the system and be healthier and better, right? So,
and I think I already kind of let the cat out of the bag a little bit, but I love that this was the next slide already. So we're on the same on the same wavelength.
Indeed. Great minds.
Right.
That'd be a good name for a product, wouldn't you know? So we talked about parotid. There's a little parotid gland in the cheek, if you will, that is the primary chelator, initiates the chelation of that mercury, like when Dustin eats and those wisdom teeth of his are, vaporizing mercury all day. It goes into his brain.
Not all day, I hope. Gosh,
Whenever
man,
he eats.
now you got me freaking out over here.
Anxiety. So taking parotid is a great choice, and not even chew it up, right? To bind it up, get that parotid gland going to work. And so if you're one considering if you still have amalgams and you're about to get them removed, preload with parotid, take the parotid, higher doses post, because even a qualified dentist, using the dam, using the vents and circulation and to suck it out, there's still going to be exposure to mercury in that eliminate extraction process. So we want to load up on the parotid to help the body get rid of the potential exposures in that elimination. Then we have chelico.
I will say this. Okay, so years ago, I did take parotid without doing any binders or anything with it. And because when I was living in LA, it was in traffic all the time, right? I was always like breathing in bad air. When I started taking parotid, I got really hot and sick, right? For a minute, because as the body was moving the heavy metals, I had to run to the bathroom and eliminate, and it totally went away. But I will never make that mistake again, right? I wouldn't take parotid without having something to kind of capture and do that. And when I had the other amalgams removed, she had the whole snuffleupagus thing, right? Pulling out the air particles and all of that. But I still had a little bit of nausea and sickness the day after, because even with doing all of this stuff, moving that much heavy metal can really make you feel rugged until your body eliminates and gets it out. That's why binders are so important, like Helico, the GI Adsorb. We didn't have it at the time, the GI Adsorb,
Right.
when I
Right.
did that, or I would have been taking that for sure.
Mm-hmm. Good products. And yeah, so Chelico is a brilliant for most of the toxic metals we're going to talk about. Chelico works really well. Parad is fairly more specific, especially for oral mercury, like from fillings and so on. So fantastic products. Often Parad I'll typically recommend in the morning. Chelico I usually recommend at night because the liver and colon are doing a lot of their work as we sleep. 1 to 3 a.m. is when the liver is doing a lot of its binding. So these, NEC and so on, ALA tend to work really well. And then with the modified citrus pectin to bind it up on its way out in the intestines. So great products, big sellers for us.
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk about aluminum. Let's say, I had a kid that was not a patient that was an Olympic, is still an Olympic hopeful, but unfortunately, and he was unvaxxed his whole life, but required vaccines to be able to stay in school, in the school he needed to be in to compete for Olympics and get his entry into the Olympics, if you will. And so, and he's still working towards that. And so he had to get monthly vaccines to do kind of a catch up, if you will. And so thymus PMG is a lot of what we use to keep him functional. I was very nervous with the amount of vaccines that he was going to be exposed to and the catch up schedule that they were unfortunately hurling on him. But praise God, loading him up on the thymus PMG during that time was profound. So the thymus, little gland sits underneath behind the sternum, the top of the sternum. It's for the maturation of T lymphocytes and antigen presenting cells is a lot of what this does. APCs, which basically means it tags up toxic metals, it tags up viruses and things for the immune system to go to work and work on and kill, if you will, or tag up to get rid of. And so thymus is very profound. Unfortunately, aluminum inhibits the thymus, and so that's where a lot of consequences come from. Things like immunizations, could even be deodorants, right? Or some of these other cookware, using aluminum cookware.
Mm-hmm.
Again, immunizations are a biggie. The chemtrails, my sky looked like this a couple months ago for quite a while. There was 1 week that I had literally every single patient that walked in my door had aluminum showing up in their lungs.
Wow.
When these were just getting really prolific, and it drives us crazy. And then again, I'm out exercising, trying to ride my bike to stay healthy, and I'm breathing air like this. At that time I was having to take handfuls of lung supplements just to keep this from really taking me down. So I'm breathing car exhaust and this kind of air, trying to stay healthy. So we have to work at it, don't we?
Yeah.
to,
Yeah,
to
for
stay
sure.
well. And so when this thymus doesn't work well, autoimmune conditions, this is one of the big triggers of autoimmune conditions, which we're going to I'll show you, Rachel, here, I think in the next slide. But then allergies and asthma, again, when we're not tagging things up for the immune system to go to work on, then we end up with these other challenges, and certainly neurologic, autistic sort of concerns, unfortunately, when the thymus isn't doing its job. Thymus also gets suppressed in the presence of cortisol. So we get all stressed out, thymus shuts down, and then we end up with these other problems. So protecting the thymus means protecting your immune system. So making choices, keeping the aluminum down, which is one of the main causes of poor thymus function. We do have a supplement called thymus PMG that works really well for that. And so this is a heavy hitter. Any of the kids that I've helped that are getting immunizations, we're loading them up on thymus typically for a week or two before, and then usually a couple of months following any vaccines to help for damage control ultimately.
Mm-hmm. So that Joseph would call this the protein aspect of healing the thymus, right? You're always going to want to do the full thing. And
Okay.
interestingly, I believe he says that the preferred minerals for the thymus are calcium and copper. Actually, both are
Interesting.
minerals that the thymus needs a lot of. If we're looking at
Okay.
balancing minerals, right? So there may be some association with low copper or low, bioavailable calcium in those
Hmm.
individuals who need thymus. I would also, think about echinacea premium would be one of the herbs to help support the thymus. And then, of course, there's
Right.
Thymex as well, right? Which is the
Hmm.
cytosol.
Hmm.
There's so many things
Hmm.
we can do. And you and I also know that L-Reuteri, one of the other things we talked about,
Hmm.
when that's brought back into mice, it restores the thymus huge, right? So there's so many things you can do to help bring your thymus back online. But this is a huge one to pay attention to, specifically with aluminum toxicity. So I love this slide.
Uh,
This is
I was
fantastic.
unaware of the rooterized effect on the thymus. Thank you,
Yes. Oh,
Pearl.
yes.
Fabulous Pearl from Dustin Strong. Stay tuned.
I'm good for a couple here and there, right? Wait till I get the mercury out of
More
my
than a
brain.
couple. It's gonna be scary. So I mentioned, so Rachel was a patient, came to me literally, uh, where's it, in a wheelchair here. She was 22, I think, at the time, and could not stand on her own, could not push the gas pedal in a car. Uh, just a feeble, 90-year-old looking, and I don't even want to look that way at 90 ultimately.
Yeah, yeah.
But she was a mess. And so she had had her thymus removed as a young child because some immune challenges she had pre-teens. So her thymus was removed. And again, by the time she came to me, she had almost no muscle control. And so as we dug into it, it turned out that she had an autoimmune reaction to sesame. I think that's on this chart somewhere, but
Yep, to the right. Sesame seeds and the sesame oil, right?
and oh yeah, so common sources. So and that came about. I treated her a few times. We were getting a little bit of progress. She went away to Mayo Clinic or somewhere where she stayed for 2 weeks to get a full workup, and came back. I was excited and nervous about what she was going to come back with, expecting a bag full of medications and things that they would have done. And basically, she came back with the diagnosis that she had a myoneurojunction problem, and that was all they really told her after all that whole workup. Said her nerves weren't telling her muscles how to contract. So I took that information and ran with it, and was able to figure out that she had this acetylcholine receptor blockage. And in her case, again, because she didn't have a thymus, sesame is listed on the potential gluten cross reactors like coffee and cocoa and some of these things. They cross react as if they were gluten, tripping up the immune system. And so for her, sesame directly affected the acetylcholine receptors, and so she ate sesame, and then her nerves didn't tell her muscles to contract properly. It
Wow.
was crazy, crazy, discovery. We took her off of sesame. She wasn't eating that much, really, just sushi here and there, and a few things like that. We took her off within a week. She was standing within, and back to work and out of the wheelchair and so on. It was amazing. And then, and it was about a month or 2 months later, she didn't take it seriously, went and had some sushi, and she got all feeble and wobbly again, literally after
Wow.
eating sushi with sesame on the outside of the sushi roll there. So that really, pinged her and gave her, made the point. And so she heeded the warning at that point and has been sesame free since, and now is married and has two wonderful kids and thriving and doing well simply by taking sesame out of her body, out of her system, that was tripping her up like this, causing an autoimmune reaction. And so we're talking about toxic metals, but thymus is a big trigger there. So this is a good story on how relevant the thymus is.
Heck yeah.
Nickel's another one. We alluded to a nickel often coming from jewelry. So I see that a lot with gals, with a cross or bracelets. And unfortunately, most silver colored jewelry, even the expensive stuff, tends to have nickel in it.
Right.
I've had a couple of jeweler patients that said there's some 5150 sort of demarcation on jewelry that means nickel free, but even some of the hypoallergenic nickel, some of the hypoallergenic jewelry tends to still have nickel in it. My wife is one of these that's very nickel sensitive. Lucky me. I don't have to get a jewelry for all these holidays. But
No, you just need to get her absolutely pure gold.
that's
Yeah.
right, platinum, huh? So pay attention. You put the watch on, or even the earrings. The post in the earrings over time. That's a slow trickle, if you will, slow absorption of nickel over time, and then starts being irritating to the kidney and bladder as it's being detoxed on its way out. So be careful on nickel. It's kind of one of those slow drip type things that can over time affect the kidney and cause problems that then people are taking antibiotics, and then that creates all its own set of problems.
Yeah.
So often we
Interesting,
can
the
make
note
some
down there to the left, possible signs of nickel exposure being foamy urine. I think that's one thing that Dr. Chi talks about to have people always check for. And he talks about his asparagus extract, but just having a lot of asparagus can help reduce that as well, just supporting the kidneys in general. But now,
Yeah.
right, if people are doing that and they still have foamy urine, then we need to figure out how else to get the nickel out, right?
Right.
Or where
Right.
we're
Right.
getting
Right.
exposed to it and reduce that exposure, right, is the important thing. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So reduce the exposure, and then yeah, sometimes it's cranberry or nutrient supplements like that to facilitate kidney function. Um, what's the herb that's the constituent that's in cranberry that everybody takes for UTIs?
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. It's got, you remember, I'll look it up. You keep riffing and
So
I'll
yeah,
find
yeah,
it.
yeah. So anyway, when the kidneys are challenged, high blood pressure is a common consequence there. So
Yeah.
so we've got arsenic is another one very common. Again, cigarette smoke is a biggie. Rice, we've talked about rice is a big source of this. Um, I typically will try to exert grace, and I will actually muscle test for how many times a week a person could tolerate rice. Certainly, we want to try to get to healthy, as you said, organic rice.
Mhm.
Brown rice, incidentally, or actually white rice, incidentally, has a little bit less arsenic in in the
And brown rice.
processing. Tends to
Yeah.
get a little bit of the arsenic out, in early days we were saying brown rice has a better glycemic index than white rice, but now we're saying white rice has less arsenic. So, I mean, it's the typical, pendulum swing, as you were saying, get the healthy, good rice, if you're going to eat it. Or look for, healthier starch alternatives. So arsenic's big old cancer risk, cardiovascular challenges, and again, yeah, anyway, neurologic problems, kidney damage, liver damage, skin effects, so skin cancers potentially, and it's an immune and endocrine disruptor. So protect your protect your body, protect your future by being aware of what the sources are, limiting your exposures, keeping your body detoxed and healthy to get these things out. Here's some crazy, some interesting symptoms. Diarrhea. Diarrhea is often your body trying to get some toxin out, isn't it?
Mhm.
So, I mean,
Mhm.
it's, I had a dentist actually early as an intern. I had a dentist that had mercury toxicity. Every time we did recommend a supplement, he'd puke or get the diarrhea. And he's like, it didn't work. I got diarrhea. I'm like,
Gee.
I was too young in practice at the time to be confident enough to say, hallelujah, you got diarrhea. Get that
Right.
garbage out.
Well, I always tell people it's better out than in, so get it out. And it's better that than as long as you don't get dehydrated than constipation,
Yeah,
which is more
right.
something I run into. But yeah.
For sure. So for sure, fatigue and nausea and so on, headaches, poor memory. So we got a lot of potential consequences if we're exposed to arsenic on a regular basis. And Jane,
I love these story cards you got up here, man. You got me inspired because these stories are powerful. People need to know that,
I
you
know.
don't give up. You got to figure it out. Sometimes it could just be sesame, right? As you did in the last one. So
Yeah,
if you keep asking the right questions and keep if working with someone like you who can help really uncover stones that most people don't even know are there, right? We can have
right.
these stories, and that's why I love this story. So let's hear Jane's story. I want to hear this.
Yeah, so she was highly effective, an active woman, loved her job, had four kids, worked at a busy restaurant. She never imagined that something as routine as weekly pest control could change her life forever,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So incidentally, by the time she had come to me, she'd already had her kidney removed.
Oh
Um,
man.
and as I dug into it, I came up with arsenic almost immediately as the trigger. Before I really dug into this too much, this was years ago. It was actually before 2020. She'd had a kidney removed, and as I questioned her, three other of her workmates had all had kidneys removed for kidney cancer.
Jeez. Wow.
And this particular restaurant sprayed pesticides every Friday night because certainly people don't want pests, on their salads and in
Sure.
their food. So imagine, I mean, that was almost half the staff that had kidney cancer. Duh, there's something there.
Right.
So she's
Wow.
grateful and cancer free now and advocates safer pest control and healthier life. I mean, it was a profound experience for her. So so don't spray for pests, look at healthier options. There
Yeah.
are healthier options,
Yeah.
citrus or whatever else you can do. Some of the potential health impacts of arsenic, right? Fatigue, lower back pain because of the kidneys, nausea, loss of appetite, and unexplained weight loss.
Mm.
So let's minimize arsenic exposure and thrive. So
Mhm.
Arginex sometimes helps. Again, some of our prevention is to look at minerals, consume the minerals so that there's nowhere for these toxic metals to bind, right? So
Right.
here's some lists. Compiled another chart for you.
Oh, this is a beautiful slide, everybody. Pause your screen and take note. Look at this, right? Because the competitive minerals, this is what most people don't realize. They're already low in zinc or iron or calcium or all three. So now
Potassium.
that cadmium, right, toxicity is much more, they're susceptible to it. So this is so informative. I love this. Please go. I just wanted to jump in here and express my delight at this beautiful slide you've created.
Thank you. So my for my muscle testing colleagues out there, typically the way this would look is, we have toxic metals on the right side of the neck, and we have mineral deficiencies on the left side of the neck. So if I rub over the mineral deficiency point, for example, and the toxic metals go away, then I'm going to go right to loading up on the mineral to not bind, but compete for and move out the toxic metals. This becomes really relevant when I talked about EDTA or so on, chelation and moving it into the brain. If we load them up with, say, in Mercury's case, lithium is one that I found also that helps displace selenium, zinc, lithium. If we load them up on those, then they're not as prone to deposit that mercury into the brain, for example. So that's in zinc you see on just about all of these minerals. So zinc is a very common deficiency with toxic metals, opens the door. So we want to increase zinc consumption in our pumpkin seeds and in our organic vegetables so that we're not so sensitive to this. And this really comes up again in a muscle testing way when somebody shows up with arsenic and they hardly ever eat rice or they don't, or there's no big overt obvious source for it. Then I'm going right to, yeah, you're probably deficient in selenium. So let's go ahead and get you loaded up on selenium. Then your thyroid works better, your detoxification works better, your hormones are better, and we get the arsenic out, reduce the cancer risk. So a big old win looking at that.
I
And
like the
this is
call for
also,
phosphorus there, though, for phosphorus with arsenic. That's something that I probably wouldn't have made a connection on sooner before
so
looking at this.
yeah, so phosphorus is super profound, right, for the kidneys.
Mhm.
And where does arsenic compromise?
Right.
Wouldn't you know, it's the kidneys. And so
Yeah.
bones, right? Bone, phosphorus for bones and kidneys, and one of your favorite minerals there, huh? Nutrients.
That's right.
So phosphate binding sites, ATP, right? And DNA so transcription. So adenosine triphosphate, we need those three phosphorus to then liberate a phosphorus and create energy. So yeah, I mean, I guess we'll have to include this chart in the show notes so that people can just, fall asleep staring at this. So
Sure.
there's a lot of information here,
Yeah,
and
there
so
is.
we're trying to kind of just cover it from a 30,000 foot view. So notice, I mean, some commonality in the minerals: calcium, right, magnesium.
Yep. Yep.
A couple of minerals and zinc are
And
probably the three
iron.
most commonly mineral
Yep.
deficient, right? And so speaking of, thank you, anemia, I mean, often is a lead toxicity. It's usually a toxic metal that sets up anemia. It's like, no, but I eat beef, I eat spinach, kale, beets.
Right.
How come I'm iron deficient? Oh, wait a minute, you got lead exposure or something. So
Hmm.
we want to look for aluminum actually competes there as well. So aluminum is probably a little bit more common than lead in the current market. Nickel, there's nickel again. So if we're getting those exposures, then the person ends up anemic and has low energy, and then anemia compromises the thyroid, and round the circle goes. So yeah, anyway, fabulous chart, lots of stuff to talk about here, but ultimately we want to load up on the minerals so that we are less toxic metals uh, sensitive. And so minimize exposure, maximize consumption of your high mineral foods. Here's a mineral supplement. We want to try to get through foods. Here is a food type mineral supplement to support that. Incidentally, minerals also help us to be less potential, they have a lower potential of storing emotions, if you will. So I always say, taking minerals, taking like trace minerals B12. Scott Walker is one of, when there's a lot of neuro-emotional complexes, he recommends taking trace minerals B12. So if somebody's has a lot of emotional storage, if you will, every time, stress comes down the pike and they've got a bunch of physical manifestations from it, taking a product like all organic trace minerals will help, or excuse me, trace minerals B12 will help prevent the storage of those emotions. And as we just talked about, less prone to have toxic metal concerns. So organically bound minerals is another one that works. I tend to use this. I tend to find this more when kidney-based things show up, and then overall health, bone health. Yeah. So we've got that
I love that
compared to,
product for so many reasons. In fact, there are other minerals in there that are not even on the label. I've definitely talked to Jack Dubois about this, that
okay.
there are some levels of representation of boron in there. The thing is, when you like Mark Anderson taught about this, when you get something from the ocean, like sea kelp, which is the main ingredient in this, you do get a representation of almost all the minerals because you can't dilute the ocean, right? You can deplete the soil, but you can't deplete the ocean of minerals. So you have a much higher opportunity to have all the minerals present in something like that. I got to give you your 5-minute warning though, Dr. V, because I know you got to
Thank
be
you.
somewhere and jump after this. So
Great.
what do you got to get to
Appreciate it.
next?
Yeah, so that's good. So great insight on organically bound minerals. It's one I take every day as well. Whereas my wife does the trace minerals, and taking the trace minerals prevents her back from going out, prevents her from
Right.
storing emotional triggers. So
Which also
we all
has
have
sea kelp
our
in it,
needs,
right? So it's also a
right?
sea kelp source, right, for those minerals.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
So you've heard this conclusion on most of our podcasts, right? Try to get it from your foods. Foods are best sources of minerals. So so ultimately organic is cheaper than chemo.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of where we're going with all this. But we've got all these great sources of iodine, right, to keep the thyroid working better. The seaweed, healthy seaweed, right, comes from the ocean. They can't dilute the ocean, but you can't delete the soil.
Right. Right.
Um, Iodized salt, I should not probably be in here. There's much better ways to do that. But we've got almonds as sources, kale. I'm a big fan of kale. Again, being an aerobic athlete, I like the iron-based iron sources of kale, beets, spinach.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
I do want to interject here and go back down to iodine because obviously, yeah,
yeah.
these sometimes we got to qualify. It says dairy products. Not
Oh
all
yeah.
dairy
Thank you.
products are going to contain iodine. This has to be dairy that is sourced from an animal that's living on the coast. That has to be within 100 miles of the ocean. If you get 100
Okay.
miles from the ocean, there's just no iodine in the soil for the animal to get it into them in the first place to get it into the dairy. So unfortunately, Wisconsin dairy is not going to be a great source of iodine for those listening in Wisconsin. So
Good
same
point.
thing with Texas dairy. So
Mm,
just because it says dairy, and this goes for everything, you have to know where
right.
it's being sourced. So many
Hmm.
times, region specific to where it's being grown is going to make the difference to whether or not you can qualify a food as an actual source of these micronutrients.
Hmm.
So,
For sure. And salmon is another good example of that, right? If
yep,
it's farm raised in
right,
cruddy water, given red dyes and so on, that's not going to be nearly as good as your Alaskan wild caught salmon.
right.
And
And
then
eggs
we've
from chicken in Wisconsin as well would not be great for phosphorus. I keep talking about Wisconsin because I'm very familiar with that. And that's where Dr. Lee created phos food because the phosphorus is so low in the soil. So
Mm,
you can't just just accept or think that eggs from chickens in Wisconsin have phosphorus. If it's not in the soil, you can't get it into the plant. Into the plant, if it's not in the plant, you can't get it into the animal. So
yeah, yes. Indeed. So yeah, lots of great pearls here as well. Pumpkin seeds are going to be a great source of zinc as well. It should be on here. That's not
a
on
little bit of
here.
everything. I believe I
Yeah, a
call
little bit of
those like one of
everything.
nature's multivitamins. And I keep them.
Right.
And in fact, this morning I had a lady come in who totally bombed out, zero taste on the zinc taste test. And she came in because of mental health challenges. And so I handed her a bag of pumpkin seeds, raw, organic, and sprouted. And I said, this is your new best friend every day, pumpkin seeds.
Mhm.
you know?
Nice. There you go.
Mhm.
And so pumpkin seeds are highly beneficial for A and O blood types, which is 84% of the population. So there you go. Rock the pumpkin seeds.
2 minute warning,
So,
Doc. 2 minute
yeah,
warning.
there we go. So I think this we're on the last slide. So molybdenum is another great mineral that helps drive sulfation, detoxification, and regenerating healthy tissues and so on. So great sources here. Manganese drives the P450 pathways. So organic is cheaper than chemo. Trying to create
I may have
this
heard you say
on
that once or twice. I don't know,
right,
maybe.
huh? It's kind of funny trying to create this on AI.
Oh,
It
I
kept
bet.
saying this is out this conflicts with our legal thing, and I had to say make it humorous, and then they finally acquiesced to find a way to
You
cheat
had
the
to bully
system.
your AI into making this picture for you.
So, I mean, in this slide, I mean, they say 100 to 150 bucks for organic. Yeah, fine. But I mean, this is so hyper conservative, right? 10 to
Right.
25,000 for chemotherapy. I mean, that sounds like
Mhm.
Santa Ana prices for you California people.
Right. Yeah.
So anyway, so I mean, choose organic. The reason being, organic has literally thousands of times the amount of minerals. So all these foods that we're talking about here need to be organic to have, again, the soil, right? You can deplete the soil,
Right.
can't deplete the ocean. So if our soil's depleted, then we're gonna, that's why non-organic vegetables lack the minerals that are going to prevent the cancers that we're talking about because of the mineral load there. So we get toxic metals in the pesticides on those vegetables without the minerals. That is a recipe for disaster. That is opening the door for cancers. So when we get these good, strong, healthy organic vegetables, eat your carrots, that are grown in good organic soil, um, we can head off these big, ugly, end of life yucks. Because, truth or trend is all about, making the
Avoiding
trend
end of life
healthy.
yucks. That's it. That's
Yeah. Making healthy choices so that we can continue to thrive, and serve the world in mighty and profound ways. So
right.
organic supports your body's natural ability to heal and thrive. Healthy cells don't turn cancerous as easily, if at all. And prevention's always cheaper than treatment, right? So
Yes.
make healthy choices today so that your tomorrow can be better. So your kids, I mean, this is affecting the gene pool all the way on down the line. So, I mean, the net organic's cheaper than keto, okay, spend the extra 5, 10 bucks on your bag of organic vegetables. You are worth it.
Well said, sir. Well said. Thank you so much, Dr. V. And you got to the end just in time, and I know you got to
Look
go.
at that. So uncharacteristic of me.
Thank you all for watching and being a part of this. Please keep your comments coming so that we can continue the conversation with all of you. We really appreciate this. We do this for you and for your patients to be able to share this information and make sure that we're all getting healthier and stronger and learning what we can do to continue to be the best version. Last words, Dr. V?
Organic's cheaper than chemo.
It is.
Go
All
go go
right.
make healthy choices. It's not that hard to do. Simple choices have profound effects. Live
Exactly.
it.
We can do it. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in
Yes.
the next one.